Welcome to the 50 Shades of Pain show, where today we're going to talk about the myths around opioids that your doctor may not even know. So join us now, going live. Welcome to our WellWord channel and our 50 Shades of Pain show, where we empower patients with greater knowledge about themselves, their bodies, and how pain develops as we age. I'm Dr. Danesh, the medical director of WellWord here in Lexington, Kentucky, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. James Escaloni, Dr. Macaroni, who is our physical therapist and rehab specialist. And today we are talking about opioids and the myths that even many doctors may not know are myths.
Well, this started to become more of a topic, not only around the office here, but even amongst my friends and places that I go to exercise. They start to tell me about this crazy show called Dope Sick. They start to ask me, like, have you seen this? This looks like it's terrible. All those things that are happening to the people out there, the way that the doctors are being lied to. Do you think that's true? And I have to tell them, oh yeah, it's true. Yeah. And I got a guy who knows a little bit about this stuff. And so you guys are privileged to know about this guy, Pharma Buster himself. All right, Dr. Danesh. He's going to tell you some secrets about this that really, I've learned quite a bit. And the more that he's talked about this stuff has blown some minds. So I'll let him take over.
Well, for years now, there's been a lot of press and a lot of reverberation around the fact that millions of Americans are undertreated for pain. And while that's true, there is this insinuation that because we have all these pain issues, that we just need to start doling out the opioids and that's the solution. Kind of like thinking around, if high blood pressure is the disease, then we can start treating it with medications that reduce blood pressure. Makes sense, right? But it doesn't work that way, because if it did, we've had this incredible exponential growth in the prescriptions of opioids, and yet we as Americans, in spite of being only 4% of the global population, we have the highest rates of pain and the most debilitating population when it comes to pain. And we're consuming about 99% of like the hydrocodone in the world. Like,
wait,
80,
how much?
Yeah, we're massive amounts of medications. Like, if you look at it on a graph, it's like the rest of the developing world is here, or the developed world is here, and then we're like way up there, like skyrocketed. And yet we still have the worst outcomes. And you can't say like, Americans are that much more broken than the rest of the world is. So something is not making sense in this equation, and that not making sense part is that we've been treating the whole condition of pain in the wrong light. Pain it's not a disease, it's a symptom of innumerable diseases. Like, how else does our body tell us something is wrong other than by discomfort and pain? And if we just simply treat pain as if that's the disease, then we're missing the innumerable conditions that are causing the symptom of pain. And that's the kind of mindset that's been approached with using opioids to manage pain, is that we've been treating the symptom and not the condition.
It's like putting your hands over your ears to make all the sounds go away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It never made sense. And what's even more concerning is when you start to dig into the way opioids work in the body, they're not really suppressing the signal from getting to the brain. All they're doing is making your brain care less that the pain is there. So it's kind of like there are two parts of the brain that I think of. There's the thinking part of the brain, and then there's the regulatory part of the brain, meaning that the part of the brain where if we were animals and had zero thought, that part of the brain would still be there. If we were brain dead but still alive, that part of the brain would still be there. It's the part of the brain that regulates how fast your heart beats, how fast you breathe, your digestion, all the things that you don't think about, that part of the brain is controlling. And if we look at the brain in those two lights, you've got the thinking brain, the regulatory brain, and then the peripheral nervous system, what controls your body. That middle brain is the interface between the two. All pain has to travel through that midbrain to get up to the thinking brain. And in essence, what opioids do is they create this disconnect between the regulatory brain and the thinking brain so that the message isn't received. But the problem is that these two will talk to each other. And if there's a disconnect in the regulatory brain where the where the thinking brain is not getting the message, it just increases the volume of the message being sent. So for as long as the medication is there, people feel somewhat normal. The moment it goes away, now they're hearing this like alarm bell sound of pain. And it's not a normal physiologic pain. I mean, people who've been taking pain medication for a long period of time, they do indeed feel a higher sensitivity of pain, but it's not because their condition has declined. It's because the medication is actually changing the way the brain receives those signals or hears the signals of pain.
So it's like your nervous system turned up everything else just to kind of normalize things again.
Exactly. What happens in the body is it always seeks homeostasis. Homeostasis just means balance. And whether we're talking about, you eat an excessive amount of sugar, your insulin goes up and your body gets used to seeing that amount of sugar, so it just keeps your blood sugar up high. If you exercise on a regular basis, your heart sees a higher utilization of energy and resources, and so it gets stronger. So your body is constantly adapting to regain homeostasis or a balance point. And if I introduce an excess amount of pain medication to your brain, then your brain is going to get used to seeing that amount of medication. And if it's not there, it's going to think that something is wrong for a long, long period of time before it can readapt to different levels or lower levels. And that's why once people start on pain medication, it's extraordinarily hard to get off of them, because the moment you take that medication away, their brain is thinking something is hella wrong. And it goes into this red alarm state where everything feels like it's a higher intensity of pain. I mean, your sleep changes, your mood changes, the way your immune system changes, your gut changes. I mean, all of these systems are highly dependent on homeostatic or balanced presence of opioids in your body. You actually produce opioids in your brain. It's the reason why if we hear about soldiers getting shot in the middle of battle and they don't feel it until they see the blood, it's because your brain has an ability to regulate pain. It's just that when you're dealing with pain that goes on for a long period of time, it can fatigue those parts of your brain. And so that's when we really need to get involved and figure out what's the cause of this pain and fix it, versus let's just throw some more pain medications on board and numb your brain to the presence of pain, but ignore the underlying problems. And that's when chronic opioid exposure actually increases the sensitivity of pain and makes it more difficult to treat the underlying causes.
So it makes perfect sense why people would just feel completely addicted and feel they could never get off of it, because this is perfectly designed to actually make it so people can't get off of these.
So there's an important distinction to be made. Addiction and dependency are different.
Okay.
Addiction is where there's a behavioral component, like you keep doing something compulsively even though you realize this is harmful to you. That's addiction. And we have, not just drug addictions, but we have telephone addiction, screen addiction.
Reese's Cup addictions.
Reese's Cup addiction.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, there's anything that makes us feel good can be an addiction if it's done out of proportion or out of control. Now, dependency is actually universal. When it comes to opioids, in my entire career, I've met two people who we've gotten off of opioids, and they were like, I didn't even notice a thing. Two people out of tens of thousands of patients that I've seen. So dependency is practically universal. If you've been taking an opioid, your body has physiologic dependency to that opioid, meaning that the homeostasis or the balance point of the brain is the presence of those drugs. And you take those drugs away, it doesn't matter if the pain problem has completely gone away, you're not going to feel normal. You feel a higher sensitivity of pain because now everything is coming in at red alert. That's a really important distinction to make.
That's really important. I actually wasn't aware of that distinction. So if somebody's been having some issues with some opioid dependency, what are they supposed to do about this?
It's a tough scenario because once they've been on opiates for a long period of time, the line between the original pain problem and this brain dependency on opioids becomes very blurry, and it's hard to differentiate. It's hard to tease apart what's organic pain or pain that's because of some damage in the body, and what's neuropathic pain, or not neuropathic, but like this adaptation pain because of opioids. So the way I approach things is we want to really look at what's the underlying problem that's causing pain, tease that apart, and develop a long-term plan for that. And then in parallel with that, we need to start undoing the damage that the opioids are doing by reducing the level of dependency in the brain. So a lot of times I'll use another medication that creates an artificial homeostasis, meaning an artificial balance point for the brain, and then use the pain medication really on that rare occasion where it's above and beyond what they can tolerate. And then gradually over time, I step that other medication down to get them to a point where the brain is not so dependent on the presence of that medication and we're not using the opioid on a regular basis. The other way to go about it is using ketamine infusions. Ketamine is a new drug. Well, it's not a new drug. It's a very old drug, but finding a lot of new uses because in the process of adaptation to opioids, there's a number of receptors or light switches that have to get switched on or off. And ketamine helps to unswitch or turn those switches to the reverse direction and very rapidly get the brain functioning closer to normal, not entirely normal, but closer to normal without the presence of those opioids. So it's exceptionally effective, but not everybody knows how to use it, and it really is a fine touch on how to use that in a way that's not really disruptive to the patient.
Okay, so it sounds like if somebody's had some of these problems, they've been in chronic pain because their physician didn't know that this was the effects when they were first taught about opioids. The patient is on the opioids, they're trying to get off of them. They need to potentially talk to somebody like you who has this background knowledge to help them out, and they could potentially use ketamine. They could use some pain mapping to try to figure out why they're hurting in the first place.
Right.
And maybe something like some of our acupuncture programs to help with some of the tapering that we can use here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we're doing here at Wellward, we want this to become the flagship for how to address pain in the big picture. Because healthcare has just been steered in the wrong direction, a lot of it because of misinformation that came out of the pharmaceutical world. And so not only do I see it incumbent upon us to have the dialogue, have the conversation explaining why opioids were not the proper way to address a lot of these issues, but at the same time, we want to answer the question, well, if not opioids, then what? And that answer is out there, has been out there for years. It's just never been consolidated into one methodology or one way of approaching this, and that's what we want to make mainstream. So by all means, come and see us, but if you are not able to come see us, use us as a resource. Put comments down in the comment section below. Ask us questions. I promise we will read these. And it's so important to me and to Dr. Escaloni and really the whole Wellward team that we educate the community of the harms of opioids and the proper ways to address these pain issues without that heavy reliance.
And if you're a doctor, or maybe you've got some friends who are in healthcare that want to know a lot more about this, you could look at some of our other pages. We've got some more academic ones that really do deep dives into why opioids work in some ways, but maybe not in some other ways. That'll help educate them at the same time.
Yep.
So we're looking forward to reading your comments, and actually hopefully this helped you out.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. This is the 50 Shades of Pain show. I'm Dr. Danesh.
And I'm Dr. Escaloni.
See you next time.
Bye.